welcome, let the games begin, Jenni Metcalfe.
Welcome to the first Hot Air Symposium. This is a culmination of several years of thinking about the need to look at better ways of communicating about the science of climate change. Before we start our panel discussion, which is particularly going to focus on science communicators and what they consider to be the challenges and opportunities about communicating about science in a sceptical world, I wanted to set a little bit of a scene. Why do we want to communicate about science of climate change? For me, in my role as a science communicator, and I work quite a lot in helping to communicate about climate change and also climate variability, there are two key objectives that I think are important. You may have other ideas and we'd like to hear about them in our small group discussions. The first one is about mitigating or reducing the process of climate change. The second one is about adapting, and it's one we often forget, I think, about the need to adapt, because there will inevitably be some effects of climate change that we can't mitigate against. So they're the reasons why I'm here. This is the reason why I've spent many long hours in these symposia together, and I'd be interested to hear what you think are the objectives or the reasons to communicate later on. The second question I wanted to ask is, who are the skeptics? Or perhaps who are the deniers? On my way over here, on my carbon conscious flight from Brisbane to Perth, I read a 44-page article, plenty of time to do that on a 5-hour flight, written by Peter Sandman in February 2009, references down below. And he suggested that there were three types of what he calls deniers rather than skeptics. There's the strategic, and I quite like these ideas, there's the strategic denier or skeptic who does it to protect their job, to protect their industry, to protect perhaps their relationship with their husband or wife or spouse, or their position. Quite often the strategic denier or skeptic tries to be an intellectual skeptic or denier who have a genuine disagreement, which may be based on their knowledge, or it may be based on what they consider to be their knowledge. They're the sort of ones that we probably hear the most from, are the intellectual and strategic deniers. But the third type are perhaps the most important in terms of communication, which are those that have a psychological denial. And Peter Sandman suggests that these are increasing in our society. Quite often they may appear to be people who are apathetic about climate change, but in fact they're deniers, and they're deniers because they have what he calls either cognitive dissonance, which is where climate change challenges some behaviour or belief they have, and so they try and justify the behaviour and belief by denying climate change. The other one is perhaps, I think, a growing one, which is an emotional response, where people feel that they don't have any power to change anything anyway. They feel angry, they feel sad, they feel guilty, and because of that they deny the need to mitigate or adapt to climate change. So I found that article very interesting, and that may help in your thinking about who are the skeptics in today's session. To mention the 8 key issues which are on that sheet, the pink sheet that you're going to select a group for to participate in this afternoon. These are summarised here, and they're the sort of issues that we came up with when we were preparing for the symposium, and we talked to quite a lot of people about what are the key issues that relate to a sceptical world, the uncertainty of science, the complexity of science, what role does experts have, and who are the credible experts, which is the subject of the next session. The role of the media to balance or unbalance the whole debate. The myths that are out there that have been created by a number of different organisations and people. People's focus on other issues, particularly now with the financial thing that is happening. the need to create behaviour change in this sceptical world, and what role of government policies and legislation is happening. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. I won't dwell on this now, but Peter Salmon suggests at the very least one of the things that we need in this sort of environment are better messages, ones that don't create fear, guilt, that don't ignore that there are technological solutions that are possible to help in terms of mitigating and adapting. He also says we shouldn't forget adaptation in our push to mitigate. We shouldn't take pleasure in creating bad news in our messages. And we shouldn't forget to acknowledge that, as Tim said, there are always different scientific views. This first panel session is looking specifically at the role of science communicators in a sceptical world and what are the challenges and opportunities for them. I've asked each of our panel speakers to give a short talk about what they consider to be the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Jess Tyler. Jess is Communications Manager at the Antarctic Climate and Ecosystem Cooperative Research Centre, where her role is focused on delivering science outputs to decision makers in government. I've known Jess for many, many years, and she's been a science communicator for many years, in fact doing one of the first science communication degrees in Victoria that existed at the time. I'm not sure how many years ago that was, Jess, but I'd like to welcome Jess to the stage.